Okay, so ready for another deep dive?
Always.
All right, well, today we're going to be diving into something a little different, something that you might have heard of, especially if you're familiar with certain traditions. We're talking about the Ember months.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and we're looking at this YouTube video called Ember Month Season Alarm Series. 01 with Apostle Dennis Moregrace. And let me tell you, this guy, this speaker, he is really fired up about this time of year, like really bringing some serious energy, and he kind of taps into some of those anxieties, those deeper anxieties people might have.
I see anxieties surrounding the Ember month.
Yeah, exactly. And in the transcript itself, he uses some really interesting phrases like, the seat of death is empty, which, wow, talk about powerful imagery, right?
Yeah, no, that's pretty intense. I mean, what do you think about that, though? Like, what's he getting at with that kind of language?
That's what we're going to try and figure out.
Okay.
I mean, that's a pretty heavy statement to just throw out there.
Right.
So, I don't know, what do you make of that?
Well, it's definitely meant to provoke a reaction, It's strong imagery for sure.
It is.
And, in many parts of Africa, especially the Ember months, and that's September, October, November, December, they're seen as a really spiritually sensitive time.
Oh, okay.
And it is a time for reflection, yes, but it's also a time where people are extra cautious.
Makes sense.
So, that phrase, the seat of death is empty, it plays into that,
Yeah.
There's a fear of the unknown, a feeling that during this time, anything could happen.
I could see that. And it's not just limited to certain cultures, is it? I mean, a lot of traditions have anxieties or superstitions surrounding the end of the year.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. The days are getting shorter.
Right.
The weather's changing. Things are sort of, coming to an end.
Winding down.
Yeah, it's natural to feel a little uneasy, to look for explanations for why bad things happen, or try to control what you can't really control.
Right.
And this video, it really plays into those very human anxieties, but within a specific cultural context.
Right. Yeah. And then it gets even more interesting when the speaker talks about, people being angry that you are alive.
Yeah.
And suggests that there might be forces working against you. I mean, that could be pretty unsettling for some, couldn't it?
Yeah, for sure. It adds another layer to things.
Yeah.
We can't control what other people are thinking or doing.
True.
But I think what we can focus on is what we can control.
Okay.
And, I think this idea ties into personal responsibility and resilience. So it's like, how do you build up your own strength,
Right.
How can you make choices that empower you no matter what's going on around you?
Right. Like taking ownership of your own path.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's interesting because then he goes on to say that any, quote, agenda of death and destruction will not prevail. So there's this really strong sense of hope there, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. It really speaks to the power of faith, right? And belief.
Yeah.
And how that can, give you comfort and resilience even when you're afraid. It's almost like saying, okay, yeah, there may be challenges, but I'm strong enough to overcome them.
Right.
It's powerful.
It is. It's a powerful message. Apostle Dennis Moregrace. And let me tell you, this guy, he is intense. He is fired up.
Okay.
And he basically, the whole sermon is about this idea that choosing life, it's a fight.
Yeah.
It's not passive. It's not something that just happens.
Right.
It's something you have to actively work at.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, a lot of religious leaders, they really try to tap into not only people's fears, but also their aspirations. And it's sort of like building them up, giving them the tools to sort of go out in the world and face whatever's out there.
Exactly. And this is what's so interesting about this, is that, we don't know much about Apostle Dennis Moregrace, aside from this one video.
Yay.
But just from watching him, you can tell that he is all about what he calls spiritual warfare.
Spiritual warfare, yeah. I mean, I've heard that phrase before. It's basically kind of like a way to, I guess, conceptualize the struggles that we have within ourselves. Yeah. And then also like the external forces that might be trying to hold us back.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so he's saying that, choosing life, it's like an act of defiance of all of that.
Right. It's being able to say, I'm here, I'm present, and I'm going to continue to move forward.
Yes, exactly. And so he's talking about these forces. And he says that sometimes those forces are other people.
Really?
And that sometimes those people are actually angry.
Wow.
That you are alive and well.
That's
kind of a dark thought.
It is a dark thought.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, right, to think about that. Like, your very existence is like messing with someone else's plans.
So he's not just talking about like general hardship. He's talking about people.
He is talking about people specifically being like,
wow,
ooh, why is this person still here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true that sometimes, maybe not to that extent.
Right.
That sometimes people's successes, or even just like seeing somebody else happy, it can trigger insecurities in other people.
Yeah.
Or, sometimes, even if it's unintentional, if we're pursuing our goals, somebody else could see that as
an obstacle.
As an obstacle to what they're trying to do.
Yes, and that's what's interesting about this idea is that
he's not saying be paranoid. Right. He's saying be aware that there are things out there that are going to try and stop you.
Right. And this is, I guess, where the idea of resilience comes into play. Because that's basically our ability to bounce back from whatever these challenges might be or whatever obstacles we might face. So it's not about like not being aware of them. It's just being able to keep moving forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the way that he talks about it is he actually uses this phrase. He says, the seat of death is empty.
The seat of death is empty.
Yeah, and it's kind of this metaphor for believing in your continued existence. Like no matter what comes at you, you're going to make it.
It's almost like saying, like, I'm defying expectations that other people might have for me, or even expectations that I might have for myself. So it's about like changing your mindset. It's really interesting.
It is really interesting. And he also talks about the fact that he received a message from God assuring him of his safety and his family's safety. So I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah.
But I think that overall what I took away from this was that we all have our own seats of death.
Right.
Whether we want to call them that or not,
Right, those challenges that we might face and those doubts that we have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so this whole concept of choosing life and believing in your own resilience, it's a really powerful message.
It is a powerful message. I mean, it sounds like Apostle Dennis. He really is trying to drive home that your mindset is so important.
Yes.
Because if you believe that you can overcome things, then you're probably more likely to actually do that.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy,
Yeah.
You're putting that energy out there.
Right. And it's not about like pretending that challenges aren't real.
Right.
It's about saying, okay, those things are there, but I believe that I can get through them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of like the big question that comes out of all of this is for you listening, what are your seats of death?
Right.
And how can this idea of choosing life and believing in your ability to be resilient help you face those things?
Right. And it's a positive idea in a lot of ways.
Yes.
But it sort of begs the question, what about those things that we really can't control?
Right.
So it's like, how do we balance that idea that we do have agency over things?
Yes.
With the fact that sometimes things just happen.
Yes. That is a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have an answer for that, but I think it's something to think about.
It is something to think about. It's a good point.
Well, that was a very interesting deep dive, I think.
I agree.
I enjoyed that one a lot. And for those of you listening, just a final thought to leave you with. What if simply believing in your own resilience and your potential could actually help you to navigate the challenges that are in front of you? I think it's a really interesting idea.
Yeah.
And I'd love to know what you think about it. So let us know.
That's all.
And until next time.
Bye.
Bye.